Behold, the divine light guides us all.
How about you, Mel Shine? How about you, Mel Shine? Rakata Yahweh Shine. Rakata Yahweh. Rakata Yahweh. Rakata Yahweh Shine.
Psalm 145. I will extol thee, my God, O King, and I will bless thy name forever and ever. Every day will I bless thee, and I will praise thy name forever and ever. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. One generation shall praise thy works to another, and shall declare thy mighty acts. I will speak of the glorious honor of thy majesty, and of thy wondrous works. And men shall speak of the might of thy terrible acts, and I will declare thy greatness. They shall abundantly utter the memory of thy great goodness, and shall sing of thy righteousness. The Lord is gracious and full of compassion, slow to anger, and of great mercy. The Lord is good to all, and his tender mercies are over all his works. All thy works shall praise thee, O Lord, and thy saints shall bless thee. They shall speak of the glory of thy kingdom, and talk of thy power, to make known to the sons of men his mighty acts, and the glorious majesty of his kingdom. Thy kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and thy dominion endureth throughout all generations. The Lord upholdeth all that fall, and raiseth up all those that be bowed down. The eyes of all wait upon thee, and thou givest them their meat in due season. Thou openest thine hand, and satisfiest the desire of every living thing. The Lord is righteous in all his ways, and holy in all his works. The Lord is nigh unto all them that call upon him, to all that call upon him in truth. He will fulfill the desire of them that fear him. He also will hear their cry, and will save them. The Lord preserveth all them that love him, but all the wicked will he destroy. My mouth shall speak the praise of the Lord, and let all flesh bless his holy name forever. Show my love for you.
Abanawa, Shabashamayim, Kodash, Haya, Shamka, Yahweh, Malakwaka, Taba'a, Ratazaka, Haya, Aisha, Ba'arataza, Kawa, Haya, Bashamayim, Nathanlanawa, Lakom, Kal Yawam, Wasalaklanawa, Kawabwat Nawa, Kasalak Nawa, Kawabwati Nawa, Wala'a, Tabaya Nawa, Banasayawan, Abal, Haushai Nawa, Mayan, Rai Kaya, Laka, Hamalakwath, Waha Allah, Wahata Ba'arath, La Iwalamium, Aman.
How about you, Mel Shine? Rakata Yahweh Shine. Rakata Yahweh.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples for his younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds. In the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakadash, pushing get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashmal Shai. And what I want to go into with this lesson, all right, is dealing with hell in the New Testament, all right, and how it relates to nuclear judgment, okay, because for the longest with Christianity, it's been this ongoing, all right, Greek myth, all right, it's been linked to the Bible of this place, all right, where you burn forever, where you're tormented, all right, forever, okay, and that was just non-stop or everlasting torment, okay, which that's completely false, all right, and we're going to go into, all right, the Bible, we're going to go into a little history to give the understanding, all right, of hell in the New Testament, and also to show what a dogma All right, this Christian dogma. Okay, because when you go into, let me see, let's get this real quick. Let's get this word. So let's go here, because we hear this word dogma, every now and then. But when you go into dogma, all right, which hell is a part of Christian, okay, dogma, okay, it has no truth, okay, no merit in the Bible. So when you go to dogma, dogma refers to a principal tenet or a core set of beliefs laid down by an authoritative body, such as church or political group, that is accepted as unquestionably true. So for the longest, this whole hell concept has been accepted as unquestionably true. All right, the virgin birth, these particular things have been accepted as unquestionably true. They function as an established truth that followers are expected to accept without debate or doubt. Okay, let's read the whole definition again. Dogma refers to a principal tenet or core set of beliefs laid down by an authoritative body, such as church or political group, that is accepted as unquestionably true. It functions as an established truth that followers are expected to accept without debate or doubt. Okay, and the main two is salvation is for the main three. Salvation is for everybody, the virgin birth, and the hell doctrine. Those are the main, three concepts and tenets of Christianity that you're supposed to just agree with without question, without debate or doubt. You know, and they were set up, by certain of these church leaders. You go back, to post, okay, Yahushua, after Yahushua, after the apostles, the doctrine of the church, started to go haywire. You see, and especially as Christianity grew and became political. Okay, so you had these corrupt motives, amongst these church leaders that was connected to the politics of the time. Okay, which we'll get into that. So when you go here, let's get some precepts and get some words. All right, now when you go to let's get this first. Get Jeremiah 3. Get Jeremiah 3 and 15. All right, this is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 3, and verse 15. And it says, "And I will give you pastors according to my heart, which shall feed you with knowledge and understanding." You see? So in these latter days, the Lord has raised up pastors, teachers, okay, that's giving us knowledge and understanding, that's feeding us, okay, with knowledge and understanding. Okay, because we're comforted by the scripture, because how can you be comforted with the concept of hell? Okay, if you cuss too much, you're gonna go burn forever. God damn. You see, how can you be comforted by that? Okay, but when you go into the true understanding of the scriptures, we're comforted, man. Okay, and the Lord has raised up teachers in these last days that's feeding his people with knowledge and understanding. Okay, so let's go here. Let's go to the book of Matthew and deal with the word hell in the New Testament. Now, you got two Greek words for hell. All right, one is just off the word Hades, which is directly linked to Greek mythology. Okay, so why would the term Hades even be in the Bible when the Most High hates idolatry and paganism? So why would pagan concepts, okay, be in the New Testament? Okay, so that term Hades is just off. But then you got that term Gehenna, which is a term we're going to get into. So when you go to the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 29, it says, and this is Yahushua speaking, it says, and if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out, cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that only, I said, yeah, let me start over. It says, and if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members shall perish, and not that thy whole body shall be cast into hell. Now, even when he's saying, if thy right eye offend me, pluck it out. Well, let's go to the word offend, just to get some understanding on that. Then we deal with the hell. Okay, because that's not literal speaking about plucking out your eye. Okay. But when you go to the word offend, all right, because if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out. So you go to this Greek word.
Strong's G 4624, scandalizo. Scandalizo.
Okay. It says to put a stumbling block or impediment in the way upon which another may trip or fall, to offend, to entice to sin, to cause a person to begin to distrust or desert one whom he ought to trust and obey, which is Yahweh Bashim al-Shah. And it says to cause to fall away. So if there's something, that we're attached to, okay, that's causing us to begin to doubt, okay, enticing us to, sin, okay, or could be a stumbling block to us in our growth, okay, in the spirit. Well, these things we have to put away. There's certain things that are not a sin, but if we could do it too much, it draw us to sin. Okay, it can become a stumbling block. Okay, just like example, certain brothers, they drinking is a stumbling block unto them. It has them in the off spirit. You see, blackout. So that certain things, certain brothers got to cut away. Certain things, and I had to cut away. It wasn't a sin, but it became a stumbling block, became an impediment. Okay, which would entice. It created an atmosphere to entice to sin. Was there certain things that we cannot do? We can't be perfect in the law, but there's certain things that we can't do, and there's certain things in this world that entice us, okay, to sin. So things that we're attached to, there could be a stumbling block, an impediment, cause us to distrust and have doubt and not obey, okay? How about Shema Shai interferes with us getting to camp, and interferes with, studying, and, certain things you got to cut off. Okay, so that's what they're speaking of. Okay, because if we don't, all right, and we become, all right, a castaway in this faith, okay, what is it going to lead to? We're going to be in the judgment. We're going to get caught in the nuclear judgment. Okay, so it says, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish. Okay, so to do away with anything that could be a stumbling block, it's better for that to perish, even though it might be something we're really into. It's better for that to perish, and not the whole body should be cast into hell, which is the nuclear judgment. We're going to prove it when you go into. Okay. So let's get this word hell. All right, when you go into the Greek, is
Strong's G 1067, Gehenna. Gehenna.
All right. Now, when you go into it, it's the outline biblical usage. It said hell is a place of the future punishment called Gehenna, or Gehenna fire. It says this was originally the valley of Hinnom, south of Jerusalem, where the filth and dead animals of the city were cast out and burned, a fit symbol of the wicked and their future destruction, which is going to be nuclear destruction. Okay, so what Yahweh Shai is doing, he's comparing the nuclear judgment that's to come, all right, to the valley of Hinnom, okay, which was a valley, all right, in South Jerusalem, with filth and dead animals, okay, of the city were cast out and burned. Because remember, America is likened unto an altar. The Lord have a sacrifice in Basra, okay, once we'll get that, all right. But it says, Gehenna, Hebrew origin valley, all right, of the son of Hinnom, okay, or Hinnom, you see. So when you get that actual valley, what was going on in that valley? You see? So let's go and get a little history, get an account. This is 2 Kings 23. Now, this is Josiah, which we went into this the other day, this chapter. Okay, remember he was rededicating Israel back to the Lord. Okay, and he began to tear down, all right, the pillars, the idolatry and the altars to idols. Okay, certain customs, all right, pagan customs he stopped. All right. So when you go down, get to the point. Let me see. Yeah. So let's go here. 2 Kings 23:6 in NLT said the king removed the astral pole from the Lord's temple and took it outside Jerusalem to the Kidron Valley where he burnt it. Then he ground the ashes of the pole to dust. All right, this is like a modern day obelisk. Okay, the southern kingdom was wilding at this point. Okay, and it wasn't too long after the Babylonians were rolled, because after Josiah, he was a last glimpse of hope, and after him, the rest of the kings of the southern kingdom, all right, were wicked. All right, they got right back to the BS, man. Okay, but astral pole is likened to obelisk, man. You see, I say Jake was wild, man, the southern king. And it said, then he ground the ashes of the pole to dust and threw the dust over the graves of the people. He also tore down the living quarters of the male and female shrine prostitutes that were inside the temple of the Lord, where the women wove covering for the Asherah poles. Oh my goodness. This is why the Babylonians rolled. Okay. This is why we eventually ended up on ships, on boats, the middle passage. You go into what the southern kingdom was doing, man. Okay. Verse 8, it says Josiah brought to Jerusalem all the priests who were living in the other towns of Judah. He also defiled the pagan shrines where they had offered sacrifices all the way from Gabah to Beersheba. He destroyed the shrines at the entrance to the gate of Joshua, the governor of Jerusalem. This gate was located to the left of the city gates as one enters the city. The priests who served at pagan shrines were not allowed to serve at the Lord's altar in Jerusalem, but they were allowed to eat unleavened bread with the other priests. The king, all right, it said the king defiled the altar of Tapath, all right, in the valley of Ben Hinnom, so none, all right, could ever again use it to sacrifice a son or daughter in the fire, okay, as an offering to Molech. All right. So you will have Jake was using this valley of Hinnom, okay, because he's going to the KJV. We say Ben Hinnom, which valley of the sons. Okay. But when you go into 2 Kings 23:10, it says he defiled Topheth, which is in the valley of the children of Hinnom. Okay. Well, you get the concept of what Gehenna. Okay. That no man might make his son or his daughter to pass through the fire of Molech. So in the same place where they would throw away dead animals that died of themselves. Okay. They were serving garbage and trash and filth. Okay. They began to use it also as a place to dedicate their children or to sacrifice their children to Molech. Okay. So it was always a fire going in this place. It was always smoky. Okay, you had maggots, you know, the worm that died not. Those are those constant maggots, because some of those bodies wouldn't make it to the fire, you know, and they would be on the edge of the valley. Okay, and those maggots will break them down. Okay, that's what it goes in Isaiah. The worm dieth not. Okay, so when you go into what Yahweh was speaking of, he was speaking of, all right, the judgment, and he was likening that judgment to the valley of Hinnom. Okay, a place that was known to be on fire all the time. Okay, and he was comparing it to what the nuclear destruction. Okay, that's coming for 2/3. Okay, and these heathens here in America, you see, but there's certain people here, Yahweh Shah, okay, was rebuking back then. Guess what? They're here in America getting ready to get their fire. Okay, getting ready to get their hell, which is a nuclear judgment, man. You see? So you go to Jeremiah 7:31, it says, and they have built the high places of Tophet, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to burn their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I commanded them not, neither came it into my heart. Therefore, behold, the days come, said the Lord, that it shall no more be called Tophet, nor the valley of the son of Hinnom, but the valley of slaughter, for they shall burn in Tophet till there be no place, man. Okay, so the Lord, all right, eventually brought the Babylonians, okay, and did a slaughter, okay, and then this time he's going to bring the missiles and do a slaughter, man. You know, Jake that was sacrificing their children to Molech, man, guess what? There's still a punishment, a nuclear judgment they got to go through, man. Okay, judgment coming full circle, man. All right, and even beyond those that was doing this, man, who's ever not part of the elect, okay, they're going to get caught in this fire, man. Okay, they're going to get caught in this nuclear judgment. Okay, so when Yahweh Shah was speaking, you see, of hell, you know, casting our whole body into hell, he was talking about a nuclear destruction, man. Okay, and that's why, matter of fact, let's go here, because when did that concept come about? We go back to the scriptures. When did this concept come about? All right, with this whole of hell. Okay, so I just asked Google. I said, when did the concept of hell come about in Christianity? It said Christians did not hold a uniform belief in hell from the very beginning. The earliest Christians focused on bodily resurrection and a renewed earth. Okay, because when you go into the earliest Christians, they was sticking to the doctrine of the apostles. Is when Christianity became, you know, when it grew, it became political. You know, as Christianity grew, the disciples, you know, after they passed, all right, Christianity became political. Okay, it became corrupt. And then you get all these infusions of Greek mythology, okay, within the doctrine. You see, he said the earliest Christians focused on bodily resurrection and a renewed earth. The distinct modern concept of hell as a fiery realm of eternal torment evolved over 7 centuries, shaped by early writings, Greek philosophy, and key theologians. So that's something that came later. Okay? The apostles wasn't teaching a place where you burn forever. Okay? There's Greek mythology, man, that was infused into, all right, Christianity, all right, this watered down Christianity, man. Okay, and over time, this uh, concept stuck. Okay, because when you keep reading, okay, it says now. It said the earlier church fathers like Clement of Rome and Ignatius of Antioch generally did not believe in eternal conscious torture. They taught conditional immortality, meaning that eternal life is a gift only to believers, while the unrighteous would ultimately face total destruction, perishing, or ceasing to exist forever. And we know that's off as well. We know immortality is only for Israel, beginning with the elect. Okay? In this go around. You see? But just the fact that they didn't teach this country, this eternal torture in the church in the earlier days, it was a concept that came later. All right? It said the shift toward eternal torment began when early Christianity started adopting aspects of Greek philosophy, specifically the idea of an immortal soul that survives death. Figures like Tertullian of Carthage urged that because souls are immortal, all right, unrepentant sinners will face endless fiery torment in the afterlife. Okay? Which when you go into spirits, all right, all spirits go back to the Father. Okay, there's no place, all right, or fire or endless fiery torment in the afterlife. All spirits go back to the Heavenly Father and they come back to the earth to be judged. Okay, when the scriptures, all right, when the parable told the rich man in hell where he lifted his eyes, well, hell goes into a condition as well. Okay, which means he's going to lift his eyes in an unpleasant condition. It's just captivity. Okay, these Edomites that die in this nuclear destruction, guess what? In hell, okay, in captivity, they're going to lift their eyes. They're going to go to the spiritual realm, okay? They're going to know that they're Edomites and understand that their judgment, they're going to come back and serve out their judgment under the sun in the earth. Okay? You see that? So it says, the belief that non-Christians and sinners will suffer material eternal burning found widespread Western support through St. Augustine of Hippo, all right, and it's a little bit after the Council of Nicaea. I think the Council of Nicaea was like 325, so, about 30 years later, they really started to infuse, Greek philosophy and pagan customs into Christianity. It said he cemented the idea as a literal unending destination of torture for the wicked, which heavily shaped subsequent Western Christian theology, man. So you see that hell was a concept that was infused into Christianity. The Apostle didn't teach it, Yahweh Shai didn't teach it, the Old Testament don't teach it. Okay? The apostles didn't teach it, it came later on. Okay? By certain men infusing Greek philosophy, okay, into the doctrine. The doctrine just became more and more warped as time went on. All right, this whole doctrine of Christianity, that's why, eventually truth was completely hidden. Okay? Christianity corrupted the doctrine so much the truth was hidden. All right, and to be revealed in these latter days, which we have now. Okay? So just go from there. All right, because remember, when you go to let's go here. Because the Old Testament speaks about nuclear destruction. Okay? And this is a judgment Yahweh Shai is referring to. That's why you go to Isaiah 34. Okay? Isaiah 34 and 5, it said, for my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea and upon the people of my curse to judgment. Okay? Upon the people of my curse to judgment. You see? So what is this sword? Okay? It's talking about a missile. Because what sword is bathed in heaven, in the atmosphere? Okay? Who could throw a literal sword to the atmosphere? You see? Speaking about missiles. And said, behold, it shall come down. So why is it speaking about coming down? Okay, there's a bunch of swords going to get thrown in the air and they're going to come down upon Idumea, which is Esau, which is, in this context, speaking of America, the land of Edom. Okay? It shall come upon Idumea and upon the people of my curse to judgment. You see? So this is nuclear destruction. The Old Testament describing nuclear destruction. All right, judgment by fire. Okay, which Yahushua likened it to what? Gehenna, the valley of Hinnom. And he was speaking to Israelites. They was familiar, all right, with Gehenna, the valley of Hinnom. They knew what he was talking about. Okay, verse 6 said, the sword of the Lord is filled with blood, it is made fat with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of kidneys of rams. You see that? In which Gehenna was known a place of what? Burning or dead animals. You see? For the Lord have a sacrifice in Basra and a great slaughter in the land of Idumea. Yeah, so you have these Israelites, you know, say that are back to fear that judgment, that fire. You know, certain wicked Israelites, man. Because even now, our people cause their children. Because if you're raising your children in Western culture, you're causing them to go through the fire. Okay, because it's going to end in fire. You see. So America is one big altar. Well, America can be likened to the valley of Hinnom that the Lord is going to set. All right, this filth over society on fire. You see? So let's go from there and go to Malachi 4. All right, just the book of Malachi, chapter 4, verse 1 says, for behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the pride, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, said the Lord, Yahweh Bashem al Shah of hosts, and it shall leave them neither root nor branch. So what is this speaking? This is nuclear destruction. What day is going to burn like an oven? Okay, America is going to be like a nuclear oven, man. Okay, with hundreds of millions of people in it being judged. Okay, and this is what Yahweh Shah was speaking, you know. You see? So when you go from there and you go to the New Testament, well, there's nuclear judgment in the New Testament. Let's go here to let's go to 2 Peter 3. All right, you go to 2 Peter 3 and 10. It said, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with great noise, and with great, and it says that, with great noise. All right, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat, and the earth also and the works therein shall be burnt up. What is going to do this? Okay, and when the heavens is speaking of Esau's rulership, which is infrastructure, is an extension of the devil's rulership. Because you go into this word heavens. All right, one of the definition goes into the acne or the zenith, which is the peak of the glory of a city. And Esau, he's at the peak of his glory. His technology is peaking out. You see, his cities is everything is peaking out. Esau's at the peak of his glory, and that's the time when the Lord's going to send that nuclear destruction. Okay. Matter of fact, just to show you, let's go here to because what's promised to Babylon. Jeremiah 49 and 13. It said, for I have sworn by myself, said the Lord, that Basra, remember, you have a sacrifice in Basra, that Basra shall become a desolation, a reproach, a waste. Okay, the valley of Hinnom was known as a waste, like a dump. You see, and a curse, and all the cities thereof shall be perpetual waste. Okay, so Peter is speaking about this destruction in the New Testament. Okay, they're not teaching a hell, a place where you gonna burn forever. No, they're talking about the judgment by fire. You see? And even when you get into the I think that's the Nelson Bible commentary. Let's see if I can pull it up. If not, I got the Nelson Bible right here. Let's see if I can pull it up on the screen. Nelson Bible. Let me see. See if it give us some. I think Google trying to remix. Yeah. Google trying to remix it. No, we got that hard copy, baby. So let me go here. So when you go into, I just read it. So you go into 2 Peter in the Nelson Study Bible. You know, that's why it's good to still have hard copy books, man. Because that's what the devil want to do with this. That's why they want to make everything digital, so you can change what you want to change. You know. Well, let's go. Let me see. 2 Peter 3. So real quick, 2 Peter 3 and 10. All right, this is the book of 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. It says, the day of the Lord here refers to the return of Mashiach and judgment, not the rapture, since the day results in final apocalyptic judgment. The heaven that shall pass away with great noise, or the atmospheric. It says, is this it? Let me see. Okay, here it is. It said, I'm gonna get to the point. It said, the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Certainly could refer to a nuclear holocaust. Thus, Peter urges his readers to look beyond this present world to the new heavens and the new earth, all right, which is the kingdom of Israel, okay, under Yahushua, characterized by righteousness. Okay, so let's read this again. It says, the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Certainly shall refer to a nuclear holocaust. Thus, Peter urges his readers to look beyond this present world to the new heavens and the new earth characterized by righteousness, man. Okay? So they know that this is speaking of nuclear destruction. All right, what Peter is going into. You see? you see that? You know, that great noise, because they speak about the great noise that those nukes are going to come with great noise. They're going to make impact with great noise. Okay, they're going to melt all the elements, man. Everything's going to be melted. Okay, these cities are going to be melted, man. All the infrastructure, even, you know, the natural terrain, ain't going to be no mountains. Okay, it's just going to be a desert. Okay, the Lord's going to terraform America with nuclear destruction. You see, verse 11, it says, seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of person, all right, ought ye to be in holy conversation and godliness, man? So what mindset should we be in, knowing that this is the judgment that's to come? Okay, this is why the scriptures, you know, constantly promote us not to be, you know, so entangled and overwhelmed with this world. This is temporal, man. This is literally going to be a desert. The things that people love and care about and obsess with, the Lord is going to melt it. Okay, so what mindset should we be in? We should look forward, all right? As the scriptures say, verse 12, looking forward and hastening to the day, unto the coming of the day of the Most High, wherein the heavens, being on fire, shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. 13, nevertheless, all right, nevertheless, so like, yeah, we, according to his promise, look forward to new heavens, a new rulership, a new earth, a refreshed earth, okay, wherein dwelleth righteousness, man. Okay, and that's our hope post-nuclear destruction. You know, and that's why we have to be on the chariots, man. You see? So everything makes complete perfect sense. Okay, when you bring understanding to the situation. All right. But this whole hell burning forever and man, it's Greek mythology, man. And that's why even you go here to Second Thessalonians, the Apostle Paul, he spoke of judgment by fire. Okay. It's Second Thessalonians 1:6. It says, sin is a righteous thing with the Most High to recompense tribulation to them that trouble you. There's a judgment that's coming. 2/3 Edomites or whoever. That's why these people is getting ready to come. You got people that's mocking, especially you got Eve hurt, trying to mock the truth and seek Esau on, which, hey, we said that was going to be the play. Okay, I'm not surprised, man. It's going to get worse, man. But as these people, make themselves enemies to the truth and start to mock and, they're going to want brothers off the street corners. They're going to try to ruin brothers' lives. They're going to, they're going to call for our heads. But guess what? The Lord finna nuke all y'all ass, man. You see? The Lord finna nuke all y'all ass, man. That's what's coming. Okay? Verse 7, it says, and you who are troubled, rest with us when the Lord Yahushua shall be revealed from heaven with his mighty angels in flaming fire, vengeance on them that know not, all right, taking vengeance on them that know not the Most High and obey not the gospel of our Lord Yahushua HaMashiach. So you're going to have, the missiles, and then you're going to have the chariot added to the fire of the missiles, man. And we rest with our power. That's why we're not tripping on vengeance, okay? We're not here to go tick for tat with you people, okay? Because we understand the judgment that's coming, okay? You a non-believer in America, man. We know the judgment coming for you Israelites, you 2/3, you Edomites. We even look at you Edomites. You see, you Edomites, you little smirk grins and fake smiles and, trying to be these condescending looks, okay? You're dumbass in America, man. So you finna get nuked. Okay? If you make it to that point. Okay? So now, man, the Lord got this thing mapped out perfectly, man. But that whole concept of the eternal place where you burn is Greek mythology. Okay? It wasn't taught, right, in the doctrine. Okay? Yahushua with the apostles, the early church. And there was something that was added, okay, due to the corruption and politics, man. You see? So, yeah, that's the point. I'll leave it there. Lord will, you brothers. All right. And you few sisters edified once again and give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Kakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to our young brothers. And peace and blessings, salutations to the hope of Shalom.